I think a lot of people wear their problems and their issues as like a badge of honor, and they do it subconsciously. They don't even realize they're doing it, and it's actually keeping them stuck and keeping them circling this. But also, we live in a society that tells people like all your feelings are valid. You really have to like take a step back and like really have the self-awareness to realize, hey, is this feeling and this emotion really valid? Because like all your feelings really aren't. I was injured at 17 from a car accident. Instead of thinking that this was a dream that could never come to fruition, I can actually break glass ceilings through my injury. And so it's so interesting if you look back in your life and like the areas that you grew the most. I feel like, at least for me, it was like the moments where I was really going through it and came out on the other side and gained so much wisdom. Love is really like, I think, the biggest thing that truly helps us overcome some of our biggest things. God's love, but also we're communal people. So community is huge. And I think if more people realize that the things that they think are holding them back are actually the ground point that could actually like project them into the next phase of their lives, they can actually do so much more than they think that they're capable of.
All right, Alexandria, thank you so much for coming on my show today. It's a real honor, and I heard that it's your first in-person podcast, so thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a fun experience today.
I know you said you've done remote podcasts before. Most people that are on here as guests have never done podcasts at all, so at least you have some podcast experience, right?
Yeah, I'm glad to have at least some warm-ups before this.
So we got connected a couple weeks ago when you were doing a photo shoot here at the studio, and I was just helping out with the studio rental. And, then I discovered your work and everything and just thought that you would have a lot of great insight to share on several topics. But I think a good place to start would be, how long have you done? Because I know you're a content creator, and then you were doing modeling for the photo shoot. So can you just talk about your creative background and what got you into that, how long you've been doing it, and what sort of content and work you focus on?
Yeah. So I was injured at 17 from a car accident, and I'm 5'9" standing. So I always wanted to be a model. Actually, right before my accident, I was in the process of gaining my sponsorships to compete for Miss Teen PA USA. And so, yeah, that's always been something that I wanted to do. In fact, one of the things that I really wanted to do was, when I turned 18, was to audition for America's Next Top Model. So that dream kind of got squashed, and I always thought that that wasn't something I could ever do again, because now I am paralyzed. But yeah, a lot of adaptive things came to the forefront within the last few years, and I realized that actually instead of thinking that this was a dream that could never come to fruition, I can actually break glass ceilings through my injury. And so adaptive modeling started happening on the West Coast, in California, in areas in that region. And nothing had come over on the East Coast yet. And so I just started photographing with a modeling photographer whose goal is to help people, get into modeling and not get scammed, because that is a thing, unfortunately, in the modeling industry, is that you can get scammed. And so that he's been a model for 20 years. He was the face of Levi for a long time. And so that's his goal, is just to help people get into modeling. And so I photographed with him for a while, and then I went to New York City for a weekend and went through Coco Rocha's modeling camp. She's a mega supermodel and learned a ton of things from her and her husband. Her husband's her manager. And so then I got signed to my first agencies and got paid gigs, and I've been doing professional modeling since 2020. So for 6 years now. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about, in the aftermath of your accident, sort of working through those limiting beliefs, because I think you just alluded to how maybe you thought that those dreams like couldn't progress the way that you envisioned, but you've been able to embrace your situation and like use it to your benefit. So can you talk about what that whole, like mentally, what that thought process was like for you, and how you came to that realization where like you can still pursue that dream, even though it seemed like maybe it was, jeopardized in a way at first, you might have thought.
Yeah. I think some of the biggest limiting beliefs we can tell ourselves is that we can't, or we've run out of time. So I didn't start modeling until mid to late 20s. I'm now 32, so I guess more mid 20s professionally. And yeah, and so just realizing that I can overcome, and that, yeah.
Are there things that you can carry over to just people in general, the mindset improvements that people can make? Because I'm sure it all carries over to, like, regardless of what circumstances people are given, I'm sure there's always things that hold people back. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of the mindset stuff that we naturally think is that we have to be naturally good at something, and that's how you succeed. And so what it really is growth mindset. And growth mindset teaches you that you actually work towards something. And when you think you're naturally good at something, it actually prevents you from working hard, because then when you have hiccups, or any type of success happens through persistence and hard work, a lot of the times it doesn't come with peace. It comes with, pushing forward regardless of, things that happen. And so, yeah, getting past that, for me at least, I'm naturally pretty. So, you think that, oh, you can just go in front of a camera and click, and that's what it is. And there's a lot more hard work that goes into it. And that's the case for anything in life, right? Like, you can't just, do something naturally, and yes, things can come naturally, but you still need to work hard for what you want to achieve and what you want to accomplish. So, yeah.
I love that. And I think one way that you can take hardship and turn it into a positive thing is by inspiring other people. And, I know you've built an audience and you create content around, several different things. So can you talk about the role that that's played in terms of being an inspiration and like bringing other people along for the journey to like learn about your story and take something from it, and finding purpose in serving that role of being a voice for people? Is that, I'm sure that that's been a big aspect of, your content and your journey too, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's helped me find purpose for sure through the pain and all the things that go along with this injury, and what I've gone through trauma-wise, with everything that's happened in my life. And yeah, I love the book Think and Grow Rich, because it talks about a man who, I'm pretty sure he was deaf, or maybe he was blind, but it talks about using your adversity for an advantage. And I think if more people realize that the things that they think are holding them back are actually the ground point that could actually like project them into the next phase of their lives, they can actually do so much more than they think that they're capable of. So I love sharing that. And I love, sharing how to, just overcome challenges, as well as, motivation always isn't going to be there. So staying disciplined is a huge thing for me. My faith for sure has helped me through the hardest things I've felt like I've gone through emotionally. And and Think and Grow Rich does touch on, the whole mindset aspect of, growing rich in life, and not just monetarily. Like, we as humans, think it's all about, wealth and money and stuff. And that's great. We need that to sustain ourselves. And for me, like, I want to build kingdom wealth, not for myself. Like, I love to give. And so having the monetary means to be like, here you go. Here's some help with whatever you need. That's something that is a huge goal of mine and passion of mine that I enjoy doing. So I really do enjoy sharing about, like, I really do believe that, your greatest hiccup or setback is like a mindset thing. Because I've seen it in my own life. Like, yes, I physically have a disability, but it's so interesting because I have a lot of able-bodied friends who would be like, I don't understand how you do all you do. And I'm like, really? Like, like you're completely able. And so for me, it clicked. I was like, it's really my mindset. It's not my physical limitations. I live independently. I've been living independently for almost 11 years now. And I've been able to accomplish so much. And the only way that would have been able to be accomplished was through, pushing forward, and physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the concept of gratitude and just taking things for granted. It's kind of like you said, people who are able just, with, the use of their legs or wherever it may be, they'll just creating excuses about, not wanting to do things even though you're able to. And, you're doing more than most people who are like that. And it's like you said, it's all mental. It's just a mindset. So can you talk about the things that, the biggest eye-opening things, like through your injury, that you're like, we really take these simple things for granted, and how that perspective has like changed things for you. And it just, the whole concept of being grateful and appreciating like the small things. And because I think it's so easy to, you can have the perfect life with, financial stability and friendships and relationships and a great career and just everything, but you'll still find things to be upset about and complain about, like no matter how good things are, which is, what I've realized. So it's really inspiring to see someone like you who just, it all comes back to mindset. Like, you could choose to say like, oh, this is my situation, so I'm just going to do less, or I'm just going to accept it for what it is. But you've decided to do the opposite. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts around gratitude and how your perspective has changed and how you've strengthened that over time.
Yeah, definitely. So some of my favorite scriptures in the Bible talk about, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then there's another one, I wish I was better at memorizing what scripture verses they are. But the other one is that the Lord gives us a mind full of power and a sound mind and love. And so, truly, I believe we can be transformed by, believing that we do have more power than we think we do. I thought it was so interesting. There was a study that came out and said that our brains actually naturally think 80% negative thoughts, and we only naturally think 20% positively. And so it makes you realize how much more we have to think and force ourselves to think positive thoughts and rewire our brains to actually think good things and be grateful and whatnot. The other thing I found super interesting recently that I learned was that our eyes actually are what sees our reality, but our brain doesn't see reality. So we are actually wiring our brain a lot of the times based on what we see, not realizing that our brains actually can rewire itself to think, more in the future and more overcoming thoughts and grateful thoughts that can shape a better reality that we're living in. Which sounds crazy, right? Like I heard that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, but kind of wild and a little woo-woo, I guess. But it clicked once I heard that too. And then the other thing I also learned recently too was about like energies and stuff. If you think about it, like, the universe is made up of energies and frequencies and things. And again, that might sound woo-woo, but if you want to live at like a higher frequency or vibration, as they say, like living in gratitude is like a higher way of living. A lower vibration is, just, complaining and being ungrateful and being, negative, thinking of a negative outcome every time. And so, just gratitude truly rewires your brain to be able to not just achieve things, but just live in a better state. And so there was also another study that I enjoyed reading about was that I think it's like every night we learned about this. I did a ministry program last year, a 9-month ministry school last year. I graduated in May. And one of the classes we talked about how if you write 3 things that you're grateful for, it could be as simple as I'm thankful and grateful for the blanket that I'm like sleeping with tonight. It doesn't have to be anything like crazy or big. But after 30 days, it'll actually help rewire your brain to think more positively, which I found super interesting. So just gratitude has really shaped my mind and reshaped my mind. It wasn't always like that, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think how long it was. It took years of just consistent practice and also just fortitude and to just push forward and think that I can overcome this, because I did. There was periods of time in my life in my 20s for sure where I would like wake up and just feel like there was this black cloud or just automatically think like, oh, this is like not that there's no hope. I always had hope per se, but that I was always expecting for the worst outcome. And so when you expect that, I feel like that's going to happen. It may not happen most of the times, like 9 times out of 10, like it's not going to happen the way you think, but cruddy things are going to happen for sure. And so, that's definitely helped me. Also, I wish I could remember this part of the brain. I need to study up on it a little bit better, but I think it was like 2 days ago, I was listening to a part of a podcast. It was with I think he was a neurosurgeon or a neuroscientist, and he was talking about how there's a part in our brain that's like in the center of our brains that when we go through trauma, it can actually force us to stay stuck in a way. But when we make that choice, because it really is a choice to move forward through that point of feeling like we are just stuck, it actually prepares us for other things that happen in life, and we're actually more likely to be able to quickly problem solve and overcome things once we get past that like super traumatic point in our life. So
mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I was taking away from that is it requires a self-awareness on your own part, and also you have to actively be resisting, the negative thoughts. If you said your brain is like 80%, or I forget the exact number you said, but more often than not, your brain is going to, encourage negative thoughts, and then, or like pessimism, or however you want to say it. Then you have to consciously be aware of it and fight back against it. And if you don't know that, then you're not going to have the tools to be mentally equipped to do that. So, I think that's all super helpful.
Yeah. I also like thinking about this more of that part in the brain. It makes me wonder too, like, was there a certain point in that person's life that part in the brain is keeping them stuck, and that's why they're not having the self-awareness too? So like I said, I have to look into it more, but I thought that was super interesting. So. Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about like the concept of just like manifestation, or just if you like persistence, if you believe something will come true, it's more likely to. Do you think there's any validity to that? Or, because it can go both ways. It's like you said, if you expect negative outcomes, that might be more likely, and vice versa. But maybe that belief encourages behavior and that's what leads to it. Or like, what do you think about that whole concept of manifestation?
I think manifestation is a biblical thing that the New Age movement has kind of twisted, if that makes sense. Because the Bible does talk about reaping what you sow. And so, but you can't just like manifest a Lambo, like, or a mansion, or, first class seats to, some country or whatever you want to go to. That goes along with like the growth mindset thing of like, in a way, I guess you could call it manifestation, but really it's hard work, and it's making a choice to live an above average lifestyle. And to me, that is like a God-centered lifestyle, because, the Lord does have and talk about how he has, good plans for our life. And, there's a lot of things that I think humans have twisted when it comes to like the Bible. And, people say it's religion. For me, it's a relationship with the Lord. And so I think if we as humans stop twisting things, that we can see things from a different light. And also the way the Lord wants us to see our lives is through a lens of light and love and goodness, not, condemnation, judgment, all these things. So.
And you've spoken about your faith. I'm curious, because I'm sure your faith has been tested over time. And I'm just wondering if, there were certain ways that you were able to navigate that. Because, like in my own life, I grew up Christian. Like I went to private Christian school for 6 years, was memorizing Bible verses. And so, I'm very familiar like with all of it. But, since I've left school, I've gone in peaks and valleys. And it's interesting because I wouldn't say that I've like ever experienced, trauma, like, of course, like to the extent that you have. So I think people can, I don't like when people throw around the terms like PTSD and trauma just to in everyday talk, because I think it desensitizes like what it actually is.
Yeah, I agree.
So I try to put that in perspective. But we've just by nature of being a human, you go through tough things. Like in college, I had a really severe acne breakout on my skin, and I mean, I still have. If you look closely, I have like scars and stuff. But it's when I was going through that, you're often thinking like, why is this happening to me? Trying to make sense of things. And through those hardships, whether it's like that or like a breakup or things like that, where you're just trying to make sense of things, like things in my own life that have happened like that, I always find myself, that's when my faith is strengthened, and I turn back to God because I have nowhere else to go. Like there's, even though I have people who support me and I have good conversations with people, it's just to truly find that internal peace and understanding. It's like that's the only place I can go. So that's the way that I've, whether it's the skin situation I went through and all of that, I try to flip the perspective of thinking like, what did I learn through going through that? How do I'm so, just as an example, I'm so much less judgmental to people who have, problems like cosmetically or just anything that is out of your control. I'm so much less judgmental of a person because of that. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if I could go back in time, would I go through that, with clear skin? Maybe, but also it's shaped who I am. So I know that's kind of a tangent. My question was about faith. And I was saying that all of those hardships have like strengthened my faith or wanted me to go back in that direction. So, my original question around this was like, has your faith been tested? And do you think that hardship like that or trauma, I'm very like hesitant to say like blessing in disguise, but can it strengthen your faith? And do you think that hardship like that can serve that sort of purpose to, because I know like in my life, that's like when you have nowhere else to turn and you turn back to God, I think it's like, oh, well, that difficult thing that I was trying to make sense of, it served the purpose of like turning me back to God. Whereas if it didn't happen, I probably just would have kept wandering off and like being led astray away from God. So like, does any of that resonate with you, or how have you navigated your faith being tested?
Yeah, it definitely resonates with me. It's interesting though, because I've always been this person that goes to God. It's so interesting. I was actually recording a little reel to like edit later. Like even like putting on my necklaces today, I couldn't get like them on the thing to like connect to be around my neck. And I just am like, Lord, I know that you're gonna like help me do this. And so that's always been my personality, even like with the little and big things. I don't know why, other than, that's, I guess, the soul the Lord's given me. I don't know. But even just, day to day, I'm like, throughout the day, I'm just like talking to him, like, Lord, this or Lord, that kind of thing. That's kind of like, I guess in a way, my prayers. I do have intentional prayer time too, but that's what's come easier to me, is just like talking to him and asking him questions and doing that too, which actually, one of my counselors actually gave me that advice, because I did go through, which people would say he's a prophet. And so he told me there's going to be a season of life where it just feels like a wind. And essentially that I wouldn't have time to just have like intentional prayer. Like I'll just have to like be like, Lord, what's this? Or ask him questions and stuff. And so I actually started doing that more often, even though I'm not in that season anymore. And it wasn't a season that was bad at all, actually. It was just so busy and so intense as far as all the things that were going on in life, in a good way, that I just didn't have time. And so it's been a really awesome practice for me to just like, completely surrender day to day and the big moments, and just like ask him for things. And there is a scripture verse, I wish I could remember, that talks about this too. But as far as being tested, I think, when I go through things and stuff, bigger things, it definitely forces me to, like you said, just lean on him more. So I'm definitely in that mindset too. And he has definitely shown up in those moments for sure. When I have chosen to lean on him through those like hard moments. Back in 2017, actually, I like didn't want to live, which is wild to think that was 6 years after my accident. And when I had my accident, I honestly wasn't upset. I grew up around disability. So my grandfather was a double amputee in a wheelchair. And so my mom and I took care of him in his later years in hospice and stuff. And I, before that, grew up around him doing stuff. And he was a huge advocate for people with disabilities. So I learned so much about disabilities before I was injured, which is so interesting. I joke, but really it was almost like God was preparing me for it. And so, yeah, back in 2017, I went through a really bad breakup. And yeah, just like I said previously, love is really like, I think the biggest thing that truly helps us overcome some of our biggest things, God's love, but also we're communal people. So community is huge. I actually heard a really awesome, it was like a meme or something online. It was like in prison, they, as punishment, put people into isolation. And what do when we're going through something hard? We isolate ourselves. We almost punish ourselves because like to heal and to actually move forward, like, yeah, there are moments where the Lord wants us to have that intentional time with him. But in reality, like, we are community people. We are community, like our bodies were meant for community. Our minds were meant for community. And so, yeah, it can be so healing to, be in community. And so through that time in, wow, it's hard to believe that was almost 10 years ago. It's 2016. I really was like, Lord, I just need help. Like, I feel so alone. I had just moved to Lancaster. It was a little under 2 years at that point. And so I really didn't have community. And so at that point, like, I knew people and stuff, and that relationship actually introduced me to most of the people I knew. And so I just asked the Lord, and just said, I need help. And he came through and introduced me to incredible community and has been like walking me through so much. And even last year was like a huge growth. And so it's so interesting if you look back in your life in like the areas that you grew the most. I feel like, at least for me, it was like the moments where I was really going through it and came out on the other side and gained so much wisdom. And not just wisdom, but like, I feel like those moments have given me so much more, like, in other words, compassion for people that are going through things. I have such a heart for like the marginalized community, because those are the people that are kind of always, feel like they're the outsiders looking in. When in reality, I feel like because I've always felt like this throughout my life of being like the outsider looking in, because my brain is just so out there, I guess. My pastor says I think of things so in-depthly to the point where like I have to like take a step back and stop, like have the self-awareness to realize that I might be even overthinking because I'm an overthinker, but it has its pros, but it can be, debilitating when it's not helpful. So
thank you for sharing that. I know that's like a vulnerable thing to talk about. So I appreciate that. It actually did remind me of something I was going to ask you just about, because you mentioned isolation and just, talking about things with community. Like as I was brainstorming and writing the questions for this, I sort of like, after I sent them, I sort of, was second guessing, like, is it helpful? Because, I guess everyone would have, like, depending on their story, would have a different reaction to this, but, like reliving things that bring back bad memories and how that's, just trying to be like sensitive to that. And I'm just curious, like, what you think about if it's traumatic things or like tough memories, if being surrounded by community and talking to other people about those things and being vulnerable about those and not holding it in, like, is that something that's been helpful or like counterproductive or just is that, because for me, like that's helpful to me when I, just getting things off my chest and like talking to people about things and like speaking my mind, and instead of holding things in like that. Or but I know sometimes like you may be tempted to suppress memories out of the sake of being like, that will bring me in a downward spiral if I think about that. So has there been a balance around that of like having that vulnerability as a, I use the term like therapy very loosely,
Yeah.
but like as a therapeutic thing of being like, I need to talk about this with people, but also, I don't want to relive certain parts of it, or like, is there a balance there?
Yeah.
Or
I mean, when I was first injured, I was a victim impact speaker for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So I would go to classes and share my story because I was injured from a drunk driving accident. And so what we were taught when we were going through like the training to become a victim impact speaker was that like psychologically speaking, like talking about traumatic events actually helps you overcome it. Instead of like necessarily reliving it, you're just like talking about it. And the fact of like reframing it from like just talking about it from like the victim impact part of it was that you're talking about it, but you're using it for a purpose. And so the other part of it for healing was that the people, part of their class was that they actually had to write me letters after and tell me how I impacted them. And so that was really, really healing in that aspect. I think there needs to be a balance between complaining and just like sharing about what you're going through or what you've been through, because you can get to a point where it's like nagging / like complaining.
or you're venting.
Yeah. Venting nonstop versus like, oh, I went through this and like, this is what I'm going to do. These are the actionable steps. And actually my brain, and I don't love therapy. I actually prefer counseling because the difference between the two is therapy, you're just talking about things, which some people's brains, they enjoy that. But I'm going to be honest, I have noticed some people that actually prefer therapy actually stay stuck in their stuff because they're just talking about their stuff. They're not getting anything constructive to overcome what they're going through. And so counselors, what they're actually trained to do is not just like listen to your stuff. They're going to give you constructive feedback on how to overcome what you're going through, what you can be doing to overcome things. And I guess I'm a doer. I'm very strong-willed. So for me, like counseling was always better for me because I was learning tips, tools, and tricks on how to like overcome what I was going through. And that's actually a big reason why I went through the ministry program I did last year, was because I knew that I was about to go through some pretty rough waters in life, growth, but knew that the Lord was taking me through some things. And I knew that, the next step was to go through this ministry program because it was going to teach me the tools to overcome a lot of things that I was struggling with, which for me was definitely identity. And I've noticed that is a lot of problems with people is, finding your identity in the Lord is something that can be so that is so life-changing, because the Lord sees us as so much better, as an individual that's so much better than we can ever think of. Scripture really does like talk about how much He loves us and how precious we are and all the things. So finding that identity has given me so much peace. And so, did I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is fascinating, just the distinction between counseling and therapy, because I think people crave, being heard or listened to, and sometimes it's not constructive because it's just that you're just going in circles, as opposed to actually having some sort of a tangible like takeaway or action plan, which is why I asked about that, because, I didn't want to, revisit anything like that, or wasn't sure if that would be helpful or not. But it sounds like it's just being selective about it and not,
Not letting it be your identity, essentially.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people wear their problems and their issues as like a badge of honor, and they do it subconsciously. They don't even realize they're doing it, and it's actually keeping them stuck and keeping them circling this. But also, we live in a society that tells people like all your feelings are valid. Like, just say whatever you want and do whatever you feel. And the Bible actually tells us that, our heart's deceitful above all else. And where do a lot of our emotions come? They come like deep down in our hearts. And so you really have to like take a step back and like really have the self-awareness to realize, hey, is this feeling and this emotion really valid? Because like all your feelings really aren't. Like, especially as women, like not to be stereotypical, but we are like more emotional. But like, to go on the other end of that, we can be more emotionally intelligent, I guess, through it. But that takes a lot of, just self-awareness and,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love all that. Last thing I wanted to ask you about was accessibility and the, awareness part of that. First of all, are there any like misconceptions that people have just about that? And what are things that you think the general population just lacks an understanding of around like accessibility? Is it, do you think the solutions are around, like funding or building designs to make things like easier, or, I know I'm just being very vague with this. You can take it wherever you want to, but I'm sure that it's something that, it's the kind of thing where if it doesn't affect you, it's not really important, and people might not care. So Can you just talk about the work you've done around raising awareness around that, and ways that you think, like we as a society can be more accommodating to that?
Yeah. I will say I'm really blessed to live in an area like Lancaster. I feel like the community has done a huge job, has done so much in regards to accessibility and has tried their hardest. There are things that aren't accessible, but for the most part, like this community has really, really tried to bring accessibility to, this region, especially because of tourism. I actually did a huge campaign with Discover Lancaster a couple years back on, accessibility and stuff, and how accessible this area really is for tourism. And on the other end of that, a lot of people in the disability community hate, having to, and I get that there's like a difference, for me, I'm a paraplegic, so I only have a manual wheelchair. I could get that this mindset could be different for someone that has a power wheelchair and whatnot. But for me, it's like, if I need help or my community's willing to like make it accessible, even if it's not, like, I'm game. Like, I went to Brazil last October, and there were areas that weren't accessible, and the team I was with just like picked me up and brought me upstairs, downstairs, whatever. And I don't mind that, and I totally get that there's some people in our community that would mind it, but my mindset is like, not everything is going to be accessible. Like, that's just the reality of it. Can we try to make a world more accessible? Yes. But there are going to be instances where like accessibility isn't a thing. So for me, I don't want to say deal with it. Just deal with it. I don't want to give that like impression, oh, just deal with it. We should always like be, in the mindset of trying to be more accessible. But for me, it's just, allow the help. And that's something that, I think, especially in this day and age, asking for help or needing help can be like a taboo thing or whatever too, just even with like someone who's able-bodied, like the mindset in that regards. And so it's totally okay to ask for help. So, and as far as, I think, funding is definitely, something that every community needs. And I hope that, they get and stuff. Like I said, I guess I am a little bit more privileged to live in an area like this. Where I'm from is definitely way smaller. There's like, a main street, and the biggest, opportunity where I'm from is to work for Geisinger Medical Center. So, where I'm from is definitely a lot different when it comes to accessibility. So that's when I do like rely on community more when I'm visiting and stuff. But I think too, what it comes down to mostly is really awareness too. Like what does accessibility look like? How does it look like to make things more accessible? And how can we have more of an awareness of the need for people with disabilities and stuff. So
and is there like I'm curious, is there like a verbal component to that self-awareness too, like for people who are just not educated on like spinal cord injuries and things like that, or overgeneralizations, or maybe it's like I'm way too conscientious and I'm always concerned about like offending people. That's just something, maybe that's just how I am. So I'm like, are there certain like words or whatever that just in terms of terminology that like, like for example, just saying like if someone is like disabled, that might, are there things that are like in bad taste, or things, just being like, I don't know how to phrase the question, but is there like a verbal component to that if people may seem like ignorant, or just ways to like educate people to be a little bit more, like educated or compassionate around it, or like use the right terminology? Do you think there's even an issue around that? Or
I think there can be for sure, but I think it just is rooted in just like be kind and just treat the person like a normal human.
Right.
Like don't see them like, I don't want to say you don't want to see them different at all, because there are needs that, like, I feel like if you completely ignore the disability, then you are on the other spectrum where you're then ignoring any type of need they might have. Right. But seeing that person for who they are instead of like what disability they have, I think is like huge for sure. And so I'm always the person that's like, just be kind, just be kind. And that goes for like anyone, and so, and just be mindful of, what you're saying. Like when you're, I guess, talking to someone for the first time, it's human nature to want to know what happened, but to be like, what's wrong? Or like what happened like right away, instead of being like having conversation or something and whatnot, because we did touch on about like reliving trauma and stuff. Like what if that person, like how they acquired their disability was really traumatic, and what if they're still trying to overcome that? So being mindful of that. So just start a conversation and go from there. A lot of the times too, like sharing in-depth personal things comes with a level of trust. So to come out straightforward and be like, how did you get into a wheelchair, or what happened to you? It's kind of like, you haven't built any level of trust with me yet. So
That's a perfect answer, because that's what I was getting at but couldn't articulate.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you extracted that from my word salad question.
No, it's okay.
because I think it's just like you said, there is that level of trust that's required for vulnerability, and just going up to a stranger and that's the first thing you ask. Like that's the kind of thing. And I don't want to say like use the word offensive. Like I'm not implying that like you're offended by anything like that. That's not, that's not the reason I was asking the question, but I'm saying depending on someone's story, like you said, it could trigger something like from a traumatic event. And just in general, if people can be a little bit more mindful, like you said, it all comes back to kindness, but just having that awareness of being like, yeah, maybe that's not the best thing to say right away. Like that was my reasoning for asking the question. If like, cause some people may be offended by certain things. So
for sure. And a lot of us just want to go out into the community and have fun. And so you're like, you know, feeling like you're just living like a normal day and doing something fun and whatever. And then to continually like go to an event or go somewhere and you're like talking to how many different people, having to like share that over and over again when you're just trying to like have a fun night out, or, you know, go and enjoy coffee at a coffee shop or whatever it might be, going and shopping and stuff. And so, and it's so different for me. I mean, I've overcome this. Definitely when I was newer to my injury, it was kind of annoying to like go out every time and be like, what happened to you? But also for me, I find purpose in it when, you know, I do like come across someone else with a disability, or say like parents that are with a child with a disability and they're like asking me questions and stuff. Totally love that. It's fun to kind of, it's fun to help people. So I also have light up wheels on my wheelchair. So parents that see me out in public that may have a kid with a disability, they're always like, where did you get those? So that's always fun. So
yeah, I love that answer. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you again for being here and sharing your story and all the just insightful like lessons that you've learned. I think really anyone can benefit from it, you know, regardless of what people have gone through. If people want to find you online to, you know, watch, obviously I'll link everything below in the show notes for people, but are there any links or places online that you'd like to direct people to, whether it's, you know, for your own pages or just other things that you think people should read or watch if they want to explore these topics more?
Yeah. Just my Instagram is really the best, or my Facebook, Alex Murray. I post a lot. I post a lot more writing things on my Facebook because I feel like that's more of like the algorithm than like Instagram's more like videos and stuff. So I try to keep up with it all, but I love to write. So my Facebook can definitely be more, I guess, informative or educational. My Instagram's still educational, but yeah, so.
Awesome. Well, everyone will be checking that out, I'm sure. Well, thanks again. And I'm looking forward to see where you go from here and, you know, following your journey through the content you put out. And I think it's really inspiring, and it's serving a much needed purpose. And it's part of the reason why I invited you on today. So, yeah, I'm sure that it can, definitely be, you know, this podcast, you know, just, it was beneficial just to me, which I think is worth it, but I'm sure other people will find it useful as well. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to have y'all along for the journey.